Some places seem to hum with the weight of what they've witnessed, their stillness betraying a restless energy beneath. It's as though the ground itself remembers every scream, every footfall, every drop of blood that's soaked into its soil. There are stories of such places where time falters, and the past lingers like a shadow at your back, never quite letting go. They draw you in, promising answers, understanding, even closure. But what they demand in return is something you never anticipate. For one historian, the pull was irresistible. The allure of piecing together fragments of a brutal conflict and resurrecting the forgotten lives caught in its grasp seemed like the perfect culmination of years spent in dusty archives and academic debates. But she could never have prepared herself for what lay waiting. The lines between research and reality began to blur as whispers crept into her waking hours and shadows danced just at the edge of her vision. It wasn't just the history she was uncovering, it was a living, breathing force, demanding her attention. Night after night, the veil grew thinner. Faint sounds became deafening, fleeting glimpses turned into vivid apparitions, and her dreams became a battlefield of their own. The deeper she delved into the lives lost, the more the air around her seemed to thicken, suffocating yet intoxicating. She thought she was piecing together a story. Instead, she was becoming part of it. Because some places don't merely carry history, they trap it. They hold it hostage, forcing those who dare to look too closely to confront not just what happened, but why. The question is, what happens when history looks back at you? The Plains of Abraham, an unassuming expanse of grassland in the heart of Quebec City, was a place where history's weight pressed heavily on the present. For most visitors, it was merely a picturesque park, a green escape in an urban landscape. But for Emily Rousseau, the Plains represented something far more profound. A budding historian with a penchant for uncovering hidden truths, Emily had chosen this haunted battlefield as the centerpiece of her graduate thesis. In 1759, during the 7 Years' War, the British and French forces clashed here in a brutal struggle that decided the fate of New France. The battle, fought over mere hours, had left thousands dead or wounded. Though the physical wounds had long healed, stories of supernatural echoes lingered, whispered by locals who avoided the plains after dark. Emily had always dismissed ghost stories as folklore, tales spun to add intrigue to history. But the more she researched the battle, the more she felt an inexplicable pull toward the Plains of Abraham. It wasn't just academic curiosity, there was something deeply personal about the site. Her ancestors had lived in Quebec City during the siege, and she wondered if their lives had intersected with the fateful events of 1759. When Emily arrived in late October, the city was cloaked in the muted hues of autumn. The air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched underfoot as she made her way to the small stone cottage she had rented near the plains. The house itself was a relic of the past, its weathered exterior and creaking floors a testament to its age. Emily found it charming, though its isolation sent a shiver down her spine. Her first day was consumed by exploration. She walked the length of the plains, taking meticulous notes and sketching landmarks like the Wolfe Montcalm Monument. She visited the nearby museum, poring over artifacts and first-hand accounts of the battle. Yet, even in broad daylight, she felt an unsettling presence. The air seemed heavier here, as though the land itself remembered the bloodshed. That night, Emily sat by the fireplace, reviewing her notes. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Just as she was about to turn in, a faint sound reached her ears, the rhythmic thump of drums. At first, she thought it might be the wind playing tricks on her, but the sound grew louder, more distinct. It was a slow, mournful beat, accompanied by the distant hum of a fife. Curiosity overcame fear, and Emily stepped outside. The night was eerily still, the crescent moon casting a pale glow over the mist-shrouded plains. She followed the sound, her breath clouding in the cold air. As she approached the park, the fog thickened, and the drumming stopped abruptly. Then she saw them. Emerging from the mist were shadowy figures, their forms flickering like a mirage. British redcoats marched in rigid formation, their bayonets glinting faintly. On the opposite side, French soldiers prepared to charge, their faces contorted with determination and fear. Emily watched, frozen, as the scene unfolded in ghostly silence. Muskets flashed, and spectral figures fell to the ground, their deaths replaying in an endless loop. Emily's gaze fell on one figure, a young French soldier clutching his chest as he collapsed mere feet from her. His wide, unseeing eyes met hers, and she stumbled backward, her heart pounding. The vision dissolved as quickly as it had appeared, leaving her alone in the misty silence. The next morning, Emily was shaken but resolute. She convinced herself it was a vivid dream, the product of an overactive imagination and too much time spent immersed in history. She spent the day interviewing locals, many of whom spoke of the plane's eerie reputation. Some claimed to have seen ghostly soldiers, while others described hearing screams and gunfire late at night. One elderly man, Monsieur Lafontaine, shared a particularly chilling tale. "When I was a boy," he said, "my friends and I dared each other to spend a night on the plains. Around midnight, we saw a man in a red coat wandering the field. He turned to us, and his face, it was hollow, like a skull. We ran, and I've never set foot there after dark since." Despite the warnings, Emily returned to the plains that evening, armed with a flashlight and a recorder. She was determined to document her experiences, to capture evidence of the haunting. The mist rolled in thicker than before, and the spectral battle resumed, even more vivid than the previous night. This time, she ventured closer. The young French soldier appeared again, his hand outstretched as though pleading for help. Emily hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for him. But just as their fingers were about to touch, his face contorted in anguish, and the other apparitions turned toward her. A wave of cold swept over her, and the air filled with guttural whispers. Emily fled, dropping her recorder in her haste. When she reached the safety of her cottage, she found her arms covered in faint, icy handprints. Over the next few days, the hauntings intensified. The sounds of battle seemed to follow her wherever she went. In the museum, she heard faint whispers emanating from a display case holding a French officer's sword. In her cottage, she awoke to the sensation of someone standing at the foot of her bed, only to find nothing there. Desperate for answers, Emily delved into her family's history. She discovered that her ancestor, Etienne Rousseau, had fought in the Battle of Quebec as part of the French militia. One account described him as a young soldier who had died protecting a drummer boy. Emily realized with a sinking feeling that the spectral soldier she had seen might be Etienne. Her connection to the spirits deepened when she unearthed a letter written by Etienne to his sister, detailing his fear before the battle. The letter had been preserved in her family for generations, though no one had fully appreciated its significance. Reading his words, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of duty, not just to document history, but to honor her ancestor's sacrifice. Determined to free his spirit, Emily returned to the plains on her final night in Quebec. She carried a small token of family heirloom, a silver locket that had belonged to Etienne's mother. As the spectral battle unfolded around her, she stepped into the fray, holding the locket high. "Etienne," she called out, her voice trembling, "you don't have to fight anymore. You're free." The young soldier appeared, his ghostly form flickering. For a moment, his expression softened, and he reached for the locket. As his fingers brushed it, the mist began to dissipate, and the other apparitions faded into the night. Emily collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. The air was still, the plains eerily quiet. She felt a sense of peace, as though a centuries-old burden had been lifted. When she returned to Montreal, Emily's thesis took on a deeply personal tone. She wrote not just about the historical battle, but about the enduring scars it had left on the land and its people. Though she never returned to the Plains of Abraham, she carried its story with her, a reminder of the past's unyielding grip on the present and the power of memory to bridge the divide between the living and the dead. History has a way of reaching out, not just through the pages of books, but in whispers that linger in the quiet, in shadows that stretch too far, and in echoes that refuse to fade. The haunting memories of battles long past remind us that time may move forward, but the scars of the past remain etched in the very fabric of a place. Some stories demand to be told, not just for those who lived them, but for those brave enough to uncover them. Emily's journey into the heart of lingering echoes and restless spirits serves as a chilling reminder. Some doors, once opened, cannot easily be closed. The past isn't just something we study, it's something we feel, something that, in its own way, studies us in return. If you were captivated by this story and crave more tales that blur the line between history and the supernatural, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon to never miss another chilling adventure into the unknown.